Hello, Amy. Welcome to the Wax Museum.
Hi, it's good to be here today.
Yeah, as I said before we hit record, it's like you're actually the first woman to be a guest on this podcast.
And I said, wait, why?
Why?
Why haven't you
Okay.
had more women on?
Okay, so basically when I got married, I kind of decided that it's like, I'm probably not going to have friendships with women that aren't my wife. And so I haven't really done a lot of one-on-one. It's almost like a Mike
Yeah.
Pence rule thing. And it's silly. I
What?
don't know if I deliberately did that. I just ended up having all these conversations with men on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I
Interesting.
mean, generally, especially when I first got married at like the age of 22, every time I talk to a woman, I'm like, I'm married.
Yeah.
Not that they were hitting on me, but so I think like more frequently I've really interacted with men just ever since I got married. Before that, I had
Yeah.
lots of friends that were girls, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, now it's just kind of like, we'll be friends with couples or whatever, but I'm never like,
Yeah.
hey, how about just me and your wife hang out,
Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah.
I don't tend to hang out with I never hang out with guys. Never. I'll talk, it's really weird. If you're a single woman, you probably don't talk to many guys. I can talk to guys on Twitter. I've talked with them in ministry settings, but in general, where are you? I don't just randomly hang out with my friend's husband,
Yeah.
So
I don't know. It's funny. And I mean, part of it too is I was like, I've never had a woman on my podcast. I think I was talking actually to a family member and they're like, why is that? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, it's not like I'm gonna, anything's gonna happen while
no,
recording a podcast. So, but I think like at some level I do understand, the Billy Graham rule. But I think like if you were to do like a Billy Graham rule or a Mike Pence rule, I think you would have to do that with anyone, male or female, and just be like,
yeah,
I just shouldn't be alone with people.
I
But
don't know. A lot of people make fun of the Billy Graham rule, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think anything you can do, you can be legalistic about.
yeah,
Yep. You just go overboard, and I think in society in general, and maybe this is the difference between men and women. I've read this stuff, but I don't know if it's true. But I think just maybe it's a human thing. We want things to be black and white and black and white, and so many things. So much of life is areas of gray.
yeah,
I think as Christians, we even want this certainty. I've heard, there's a thing called red letter Christians. We're going to follow the red letters of Jesus. And the thing is, even that, you still have to sort of, he didn't address every single issue.
no,
I think as Christians, it's about the Holy Spirit and letting the Holy Spirit work through us. So when I assess a situation, I'm going to talk to this person. I kind of look for I'm like, God, I don't want to sound all super spiritual, but I'm like, God, is this a right thing? If I see somebody and I want to give them $20 because they have a sign up, God, is this the right thing? And then maybe he might show me McDonald's that's 2 blocks away. I'm like, okay, I'll do a gift card. But I think we don't want to rely on the Holy Spirit. We want to have these black and white rules. So then the Billy Graham rule is black and white. And we're good at that because then we have control. I think it's kind of like that. Sorry,
life doesn't work that way. And if you have a black and white rule, then you don't have to worry about whether you're actually following what the Holy Spirit's saying.
Right.
I mean, the same thing too when you get super hung up on the technicalities of scripture.
Right.
And you're just like, oh, wait, let's see what the word says. And the people that become real biblical literate or literalists, will have a tendency to have a specific interpretation of the Bible, and then they confine everything to that, which kind of segues nicely into women in ministry, because I think there's been kind of I mean, I get the sense anyways from reading the Bible and hearing people talk about the Bible that the Bible is meant to work towards liberating people, and people are using it retroactively to confine people, and in particular women.
Yeah, I think that the Bible is one of the best and worst weapons. It's a
Mm.
great weapon when we're trying to use it in our lives, be defensive or offensive. It's an awful weapon when we use it against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of that. And I really didn't realize, um, I knew that there were like churches that weren't as woman friendly,
Right.
or ones that like, don't have women pastors and stuff like that. Like we have that. We don't have, some churches don't have female pastors. But I grew up in
Right.
a Wesleyan church. So the Wesleyan church always had female pastors.
Hmm.
I didn't always personally have a female pastor. I've never had a female senior pastor. But, so it was never like, it was always like a weird thing that women couldn't do things. But the Wesleyan church at that point, they didn't allow dancing
Hmm.
and you couldn't play cards and you couldn't drink. So, I'm a little bit more like, oh, can Christians really drink? Like, I think it's fine. But you know what I
Oh,
mean?
I
Like,
remember I was
when
probably, I would say maybe 13 when I realized there were Christians that drink.
I was, I was gobsmacked. I was just like, what? Like, can
Yeah,
you
yeah.
be a Christian and drink? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
sort of, it's sort of like you don't, you think things are a certain way and then you kind of like get older and you're like, oh my gosh, like,
Mm-hmm.
you can still love God and say curse words. Like maybe it's not the best idea, but you can do this. So I think that I don't know what we're talking about, but yeah.
So the Wesleyan Church had women in ministry for like a super long time. Do you know what year they started, like with women in
And
ministry?
from the very beginning, I was
Which would
talking
be
to some
1700s, maybe?
I keep thinking 1880s, but I don't know why.
Oh,
But
okay.
definitely since their inception. I can't particularly think of their exact year, but because they were, they broke away from the Methodists, and the Wesleyans were very much influenced by John Wesley and
Which would be
Charles Wesley.
1800s, wouldn't it?
Um,
I think you
I
might
don't
be
know.
right on that.
Um, but they were also influenced by the fact that Susanna Wesley, their mother, had such a huge impact on their
Mm,
lives and their
mm-hmm.
spiritual life. So, it was always kind of like it was always something that just kind of was there
Hmm.
in my life, even though I didn't actually have female pastors.
Right. So what do you believe to be your giftings?
My giftings, personally,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good at like shepherding
Mm.
and
Okay.
leadership, which is always very awkward when you're a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like shepherding, leadership. I'm kind of like I'm good at having an idea and figuring out people to execute it. I'm not good at
Mm-hmm.
doing it just by myself. I'm good
Mm-hmm.
at like leading teams and things like that, and I like that. And those are pretty much my gifts. So those are actually kind of tough gifts for a woman to have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can be a secondary leader, or I can very creative. And sometimes I don't know, you seem pretty creative. You know how like you have your vision, you want people to do the vision.
Yeah.
So I'm good at vision and things like that. So I'm like, crafty and stuff. But I don't know if that's like a spiritual gift, but so it's a so leadership and having gifts and being able to like sort of organize people is one that a gift that's treasured among men. But when you
Mm-hmm.
have it as a woman, you're always told, or growing up, I was told, you need to be quieter. My mom would always say that I'm too loud and too
Mm.
opinionated. So that's why I didn't have a boyfriend. You get told these little things your whole life, and then you get to be like 40, and you're like, man, what was that all about? Um, and then you have pastors kind of like, even if they allow female pastors, there's still kind of like there's still a bias there.
Mm.
I truly don't think that like men who are Gen X and millennials and down that path, I think men coming up really don't have that much against women. I mean,
Mm.
there's obviously that crowd that's like women never, but in general, I think that people in our generation and younger are very into like women and very want to be inclusive. I truly believe that. I just don't think they
Mm.
always know how to be.
Hmm. And I think what's interesting is watching women in politics, because I think the very same qualities that we see in a man as good leadership is, gets women called names.
Hmm.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
I've been noticing that bias, and it's like, yeah, we don't like her. She's too outspoken. And it's
Yeah. Or
like, hello? Who's
yeah.
leading the United States right now? Like if Donald Trump was a woman, would that fly at all?
No. No.
It's
And
crazy.
I think we're always going to have our biases. I mean, I have
Hmm.
biases about men, and men have biases about women, and women
Yeah.
have biases about other women. I mean,
Hmm.
it's how it is. I think it's just, we have to, I think it's always just important to talk about like our bias. Like, we've been talking so much about Black Lives Matter and whatnot, in the news and our friendships. And like, I think the thing is that like we do need to look at, where do we see our bias? Where do we see problems in our life where we didn't know there was systemic racism? Like we didn't know what that was. That's
Hmm.
okay. What's not okay is to continue not being to be ignorant about that. It's okay
Yeah.
to not understand where women should fit in the church. You don't understand. It's okay. It's okay not to understand everything. But it's not okay to remain ignorant about it. I think
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, it's funny you say bias, because that's actually one of my questions I want to ask people on Facebook. What is your bias? We'll see how that goes. I get in trouble for some of my questions, but I've been thinking about, like, because with a lot of this, what's gone down with COVID, it's like I work in health. Like I am a consultant industrial hygienist, and so I like look at worker health and what affects worker health. And so when people say, like, you know what, how about just everybody get COVID? I'm like, I can't even entertain that thought, because my living, like my job, is based on protecting people's health, stopping
Mhm,
people from getting a disease. And there's
mhm,
never really an area, within my realm where you say, yes, get the disease, it's good for you. Even
mhm.
even if that's the right thing, it's like I can't even entertain that thought, because my job is to protect people from stuff, right? And so I was thinking, I'm like, wow, we all have incentive to have certain biases. So are there things that you think that you may have that are biases that you just, it's inherent, maybe because of your occupation or because of who you are?
Like my own biases.
Yeah,
Um,
just an easy question. I should start asking every podcast guest that, eh?
I'm trying to think. I probably do have, just because of my because of my life. I probably definitely have some biases. I think I have a bit of a. I'm trying to think of like how would you define bias first? I mean, how deep are we getting with this?
Well, I think with a bias, it's like you have a more of a propensity to take a side on an issue,
Okay.
and will not really entertain the other side of the issue. Because like I said, for me, and when we talk about COVID, it's like I can't even entertain the idea that this is fake. I can't even entertain the idea that it would be a good thing for someone to get COVID, because it's too much cognitive dissonance.
Well, I mean, I have that bias too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I mean, I think that I don't know if bias is even a fair word. I think it might be experience,
Hmm.
because like I think about COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and how they describe how the people die. Well, my mother had cancer and died just because she did have cancer in her lungs. Like that's how they kind of discovered she had this like huge cancer. She
Yeah.
died 10 days after her diagnosis.
Wow.
And but they have a thing called active dying, and the way that they describe COVID is what happened to her.
Hmm.
So when you see somebody die, even though it wasn't COVID, it was 3 years ago, but when you see somebody you love die from something, it changes things.
Hmm.
When you see somebody you love suffer with something, I mean, you kids, right?
Yeah, I do. 3.
Right. So you can talk about chicken pox, but when you see a 3-year-old suffer with chicken pox, even though they're going to get through it, you don't want to see your kids suffer with chicken pox,
No.
and they
That's
don't.
interesting. So sometimes experience, well, it's
Right.
experience leads to a bias, but that bias is based in experience. So it doesn't feel like it's a bad kind of bias. It's like,
Right.
you know what? I can't even entertain that thought because I experienced this.
and then sometimes, so I think it's just still just being aware, like, okay, where's this feeling coming from? Like, what is this about?
Yeah.
Like growing up, um, my parents at one point were Republicans, and
Mm.
so definitely, I would think when immigration first became a thing, I was like, well, you can't come here illegally. Like, what is that? Like, who just
Hmm.
thinks you can just come here illegally? And my best friend, who I share a house with, who I just sort of motioned that way, even though she's not even in the room. She would be
Hmm.
sitting over there if she was here.
Hmm.
Um, she's a social worker,
Hmm.
and so she started. So she, would interact with undocumented workers,
Yeah.
and they'd say, "Oh, please don't tell anybody," and like
Yeah.
they have like she'd have to find them housing or something, and it would just be like somebody's uncle or something like that, and it was like people are here and they want to work hard, and they want to like stay adopt a kid that nobody else in their family wants, but they can't because they're undocumented.
Right.
They're doing these crap jobs, and oh no, we're working under the table, and just not really causing a ruckus.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you hear the stories as to why they came here and what was going on in their country. And it's
Yeah.
like a girl, I remember hearing one story. It was on some news thing where a girl had been raped,
Hmm.
and you try to report that to the police, and you don't. The police are with the gangs, and they would have killed her. So she came here. I mean, 17 years old. Like, what are we supposed to do with that? We're just supposed to be like, okay, well, I'm sorry you're gonna get killed because you were gang raped and it's not your fault, but hey, why don't you just die? Like, what kind of, I don't want to be that kind of a person. And I know it's not always that simplistic. I know there's other things about it, but there are people, who are being, so like, to me, it was like a different issue. Like, I could see, so before me just being like, no immigrants, they're all bad, they shouldn't be here because it's not legal. There are legal ways. When you look at how difficult it is to get here legally, and how it's become even more difficult over the past 4 years, that there seems so many systems are broken, and it's not a great system. So it's
Right.
not. I think, I don't know. I don't want to talk about immigration.
So
I talk about all the things.
yeah, you talk about all the things. So I guess this makes me think too, though. Like, it's like, can you entertain the idea that women should not be in leadership? Because of what you've experienced and what you've been gifted with. It's like
I
I can't
can.
even
I
entertain that
can.
thought.
Well, the thing is, like, I'm okay with people being egalitarian or complementarian. I have
Hmm.
no problems with that.
Yeah.
Um, the problem I have is when, because I haven't been called. I don't feel like I've been called to be a senior pastor. I
Right.
don't necessarily even think I've been called to be a pastor of men. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really feel strong. I love teenagers. I love
Yeah.
middle schoolers, and I love
Hmm.
women. So those
Hmm.
are the, like college age women and stuff like that. And even there, it can get a little dicey. So I definitely have never really gone to the controversial part of ministry. But I
Right.
mean, again, neither has someone like Beth Moore.
Yeah.
And yet somehow she is in the middle of all the firestorms.
So Beth Moore is primarily women's ministry, is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She always never claimed to want to be a senior pastor. She
Yeah.
has always specifically written her studies and everything towards men. And I remember in one study, she said, men come, and she's not going to stop them from coming to like her Sunday school,
Exactly.
whatever,
Yeah.
but they would come. And she's like, okay. And then, I don't know, a couple years ago, she spoke in church on Mother's Day, which was apparently a sermon. And now people are like, she's a false prophet. She's a heretic. And I've seen these people online, and I'm like, well, why is she a false prophet? And they never respond to me.
Man,
No, I
this
don't
is
know why.
silly stuff, because it's just like,
So,
man, like I came from a church, like my last church I was in before this one was a church that was pastored by a husband and wife couple. And man, when his wife spoke, she's just dynamite. Like, she's just great at what she does. And I was like, man, I think we're missing something if we don't allow women to preach. There's some women that are so gifted, and it's silly to me that it's like, no, you got the wrong bits. You know, like,
Well,
it's like, that doesn't make sense to me at all.
well, I mean, like some churches don't necessarily ordain women, but they'll let women speak at the pulpit or teach. Like they'll let a
Yeah.
missionary share a testimony. They might let somebody who's president of a college, or it depends what denomination. But you know, I've seen women come and share testimonies or share mission trips, or they were a special kind of speaker, like maybe the human trafficking, and they'd come and take the pulpit for a week.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think to support women, you have to say, I'm egalitarian. I think women can be senior pastors. I don't
Yeah.
think that you have to, again, you don't have to be black or white. There's so much gray in the middle.
Yeah. No,
And
I
I
see
think,
that.
and I think what's problematic is what men aren't getting, what men don't always understand. And this is the thing. They don't understand like representation. I was like growing up, I've always struggled with my weight, always. So I remember watching like TV shows. All the girls were skinny and pretty. I remember
Yeah.
there's this one episode of Saved by the Bell where Zach Morris, they have like some kind of like guy auction where you auction off. They're auctioning off the guys, and you win them. You like bid on them, and they'd be your date to some dance. Maybe it was a Sadie Hawkins dance. I don't know. Anyway, so this girl bid on Zach. He wanted it to be the hot cheerleader that he liked, but no, it was like this fat girl. And then it was like this, and then he didn't know what to do because, you know, she was fat and, you know, but then he decided to be the good guy and go with her. And I'm like, really? Like, and I remember at the time thinking, oh, wow, it's so great. Zach Morris would go to the dance with a fat girl. Wow, he's just such a great guy. Looking back on it, I'm like, that was my representation. Like wow. So finally, when I got a little older, I'd see there used to be a show on called The Practice, and that was
Yeah, I've
the
seen that.
first plus size female actress I had really seen that had like a powerful role, that was intelligent and strong, and she had a boyfriend and he was cute, and it wasn't like she wasn't sloppy seconds for him, you know. He really liked her. And then you had Delta Burke, who had been on Designing Women,
Right.
and she had gained weight. I mean, she is a stunningly beautiful woman. And, you know, she had gained weight. And I remember seeing tabloids when I go shopping with my mom in the supermarket making fun of her weight. And then there's always Oprah's weight, too.
Yeah.
So you didn't see the representation. So now you watch a TV show and you have female characters that are plus size. You even have news anchors sometimes. The characters, you have women who are plus size, and that's so amazing.
Yeah.
That makes me feel represented. So take that and take that to the church. If you don't see women who are teaching the Bible, you're not going to have girls that are going to grow up to teach the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we are so focused on the nuclear family. It is ridiculous to expect mom and dad to be able to do everything. It's just impossible. I think that's why we're a body of believers. That we support each other. Like you wouldn't expect a senior pastor to be able to do everything. I mean, people do. He's probably like, they want him to be good at finances. They want him to be good at preaching. They want him to be good at counseling. They want him to do, he can't. It's impossible. That's why you delegate what you're not good at. And some of the things you are good at. And so I think we need that. I think that representation needs to be women too. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
No, I like that. No, I remember somebody, I think I heard it several times, you know, where they said it takes a community to raise a child. And it's like, even, you know, my own children, there are certain aspects of who they are that, you know, their mother and I can't speak to. You know, I have one kid that's like phenomenal photographer, and he learned everything he knows from his grandfather, right? And if I was more insecure, I'd be like, oh, well, I wish, you know, like, why can't you learn photography from me? Like, it's like, no, I don't know anything about photography. I don't care about photography. I'm like, I'd rather just enjoy the moment than take the picture, right? And so, I mean, like, and there's just other things like that, you know, where my kids have other family members that kind of are shine in ways that they do. And it's a blessing. It's a huge blessing. And so I think, you know, like when I think about the body of Christ, and it's like allowing people to shine in the way that they shine.
Well, I have friends. I don't have any sisters or
Mm-hmm.
brothers. You know, I don't have family. So church family has always been really important to me. I'm not married. I don't have children.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so I have friends though, and they're awesome. And so my one friend has 3 little kids. They are 8, 7, no, 6, no, 7, 6, and 4. And they're like pseudo nieces and a nephew, and they're amazing. And so before COVID, every month we go over, and sometimes more than once a month, but we definitely give mom and dad a date night. So they can
Mm-hmm.
just go out and do whatever. And we would watch the kids and hang out with the kids. It's my best friend and I did it. Do it. Well, we will do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great because I get all that kid fun time and
Yeah.
can really spend the time just engaging with the kids. Like they think that I'm there for them always, even from visiting their parents, you know? And so they get that engagement that they need. Mom and dad get a break for free because it's not like you have that much money when you have 3 kids. Mom and dad get a break. I get kid time. Everybody's happy. And then like the kids get a chance to like interact with somebody else. The problem with a model like that is that the single women don't always want to watch your kids, married people. They want to be
Mm.
involved in your family. So I think it's like anything. Like women don't mind. Like my roommate loves baking. Like loves it. I'm like, oh, I don't know what the kitchen is.
Yeah.
um, she loves baking, but I mean, and she would bake things for church. But like, if she was only asked to bake things for church, that it's too much.
Yeah.
You know, like don't see people as just one thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, I guess that kind of was interesting for me too. Like when I was at the other church, it's like I'd gone from like leading worship in a very small church to playing guitar and singing at this church, but
Hmm.
not leading. And I missed leading so much because it's like picking out the music was like this creative
Yeah, yeah,
process
yeah,
that I loved, right? And then not only that, but it's like as I led, I would like teach the congregation about the songs, you know, I'd be like, oh, this is
yeah.
what God's saying right now, you know, and I missed that so much. And I ended up like basically making my own like little thing. There was a church that was starting out and I went and helped them out and I put together my band of misfits, but I never really got opportunity to lead at that church. And I got relegated to playing bass, which I enjoyed playing bass and I got used to it and everything. And so when we moved to this new church, I heard they really needed bass players. And I'm like, oh, I think God's telling me I need to help out with bass, right? So I went there and I guess I got really chatty and talked about all the things I'm doing, including, you know, the music that I've recorded, like the stuff that I've
Hmm.
written, and how I love songwriting and I love mentoring other artists. And so I did my audition, and when I'm done my audition, I get a text back because they said they were going to text me about it, and they're like, you know, like we think you could be really good if you hone your craft. You could be a bass player here, but I don't feel like your heart is in it. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what church ever have I offered to serve at? And they said, I don't know if your heart is there. Like, what church cares about that? They just,
I know.
you can play bass, you got a heartbeat, come play, you know? And so I was taken aback by that. And like, so COVID hit, I'm still not serving at that church, but it's like I've got 2 podcasts. I'm working on a second Bridge Livwat album. I'm trying to build an artist collaborative. It's like I got all this stuff going on outside of the church. I don't know if I'm actually going to serve in the church, but could you tell me a bit about what happened with you when you tried to serve at the church? Were you turned away? Like what happened when
Oh no, I've served in the church.
you
It's
have?
just like when I was a women's ministry director, it
Oh,
would
okay.
just it would definitely be a lot harder for like our pastor was probably like my parents' age, so like in his mid 60s.
Hmm.
But even just the men who are younger, it was sometimes hard for them to like understand like why we needed funding for certain things.
Okay,
So like
for women's ministry.
right, so
Yeah.
like it was weird because like you'd approach them about money, and the board was mostly men, and it was just mostly men controlling everything. So I'd
Wow.
say like they could see, and I don't think they were like, this was a Methodist church, and it was a
Mm,
conservative Methodist church, which is a huge distinction apparently in United Methodist Church today. It was a very conservative Methodist church.
mm-hmm.
So the weird thing though is that, so I thought, well, okay, like I need to think more like a man when I do this. So, I wrote out a whole proposal, was not asked to, but I did a whole proposal because I worked in public relations, and you would always, have a mission statement and then the factors, then the little ways that you were going to achieve that mission statement and objectives and everything. So I was like, well, it works for life. I'm trained as a counselor. You did that sort of thing with treatment plans. Like, it works for life. So that's what I do.
Mm,
I made it work for life. So I gave it to the board, and they loved it, and they gave us the funding. So then I was like, well, this approach works. So then I'm like, well, here's our conference. This is the conference we want to have. These are the rooms we want to have, blah, blah, blah. Then I'm told, oh, you can't talk to us like that. That's an attitude. I'm like your attitude. And they talked about my attitude. I'm like, I sent you an email. Like, literally, it's like, oh, our conference was approved for, whatever date. And here's the rooms we'd like. There's no attitude in the email. Like, it's
mm,
an email. Like, it didn't have any emotion. It was like, thank you, Amy. Like, it was just
yeah.
like, and I think, like, if I was a man, it would just be succinct. I've learned that there's certain things that, like, and I feel like that feels so stereotypical to say, like, oh, when I talk to a man, blah, blah, blah. But certain, like, sometimes, like, a woman will talk about blah, 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 I feel. At some point, it can be either gender, really, but at some point, a man just wants you to get to the point
Mm,
more than a woman. A woman rambles. And I feel like I'm being so, like, there's so many people who will listen to this and be like, she is so stereotypical. That is a gender stereotype, blah, 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 blah. I'm not like that. That's right. You're not like that, but there are people who are generally like that. That's why we have stereotypes. Sometimes stereotypes are wrong. Sometimes stereotypes are going off of a type that seems
mm.
louder than the other types. And that's just
Personal,
what
yeah, and that's personality types, right? And so
right.
maybe there is more of a propensity for females to be that personality type.
Yeah.
I know men that are that personality type too. And
Mhm.
like sometimes I encounter people that are just chatty, but like I don't know, like I like good chatty, but there's like a bad chatty where the
Right.
person's just talking for the sake of talking and there's no substance to what they say ever. And
Mhm.
I have difficulty with that personality type sometimes.
Well,
Um,
yeah. I think it also
yeah.
depends what you grew up with. My dad is like, he worked in mental health. He had been at Wesleyan pastor when I was a kid, and then had decided to continue working mental health instead. But my dad is definitely very soft spoken, doesn't
Mm,
yell. He's
hmm.
like a reader. He's like a thinker. He at one point he used to be a hobby herpetologist. So we had like this room full of all these turtles and snakes, and
Cool.
he would do presentations. Yeah, he hatched turtles,
Uh-huh.
and he didn't yell. He listened to Bob Dylan and the Beatles and the Beach Boys. It's where I get my wide, vast love of music from.
Hmm.
And so that's my dad, And so I meet these men who are, and like, he would talk about feelings, like, like, how are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? Like, he was good at that stuff. And so if that's like your exposure to men,
Hmm.
and my grandpa was like a little different. And those are like the main men in my life.
Kind of
My
makes me
grandpa,
wonder if any
right.
man can ever measure up to that in your life.
Well, my dad also left. So, I mean,
Oh, I'm
having
sorry.
that, somebody not having enough. And so when you're talking about bias, I was like, oh, my dad left when I was 19, and that was pretty upsetting.
Yeah, I'll
And
bet.
I might have a bias against, like, I think in a way, a little bit of a bias against marriage, or just maybe marriage not being for me. Like, I want
Hmm.
everybody's marriage to be super successful.
Right.
I know what it's like to, be 19. And it's weird to have your dad leave at 19.
Yeah,
So, and
I'll
really,
bet.
since I'm 40 now, he left 21 years ago, and our relationship is still bad. And it's not,
Yeah.
there's forgiveness. It's not like he's not forgiven, but it doesn't mean that me forgiving him changed anything either.
Yeah.
it's like it's not like he's angry at me. He just feels so guilty because he had been a pastor, that he had done this thing, and that he just like, and so like I've had those when I remember being like in college, and it was like right at the end, or like right at the end of the whole I kiss dating goodbye phenomena.
Yeah.
So it was like, you need to ask the girl's permission to date her, and I'm like, I don't really know who you're gonna ask because my dad's not around and my grandpa, he's not a Christian, but and
Mm.
it was one of those things that was kind of devastating for that part of your life, because those like I kiss dating goodbye and things like that assume that all the girls are coming from these great
Yeah.
Christian homes or whatever, and
Yeah.
so.
Huh. It's funny. I remember when I went to college,
Hmm.
I basically met my future wife um, pretty close into the beginning of college, and we were just like friends, and we didn't start dating until I think like December, because she promised God she wouldn't date for a year. She had went to Bible college and all this,
Yeah.
and but I remember like I had left home for the first time, and it was like September. Um, and there was like this one moment where I was working for Safeway grocery store. I guess that's in America too.
Yeah, we don't have any here.
You don't have Safeway? Okay.
I don't know if
Oh,
we
maybe it
do.
is a Canadian thing. Okay.
I don't have it
Anyways,
in I don't have it in my area.
okay. A grocery store. And there were all these people on a bus, and they were from like another town where I worked at the same grocery store chain. And they're like, we're going to Red Deer, which is another town. And they're like, we're going to this like big competition. You want to come? And I had this moment where I'm like, I have no parents to answer to. And I'm like, I could just go on this bus and go, right? I didn't have anybody to answer to. Um, and that was like one moment in my life where I didn't have to answer to anyone. And from like, I guess for a very long time now, I've always had someone to answer to. And so when I think about single people, I'm like, you know, I would not trade my life, to say, oh, I wish I was single. But I'm like, I think there's something there though where you have the freedom, and like where you're like, okay, we're gonna take some kids for the night, or for the evening, and
Yeah.
give their parents a break. And it's like I can do that, but then I give the kids back, and they're not my responsibility anymore.
Yeah.
And I can see where that could be like a great thing.
Well, I'm fortunate in that a lot of single people are very alone.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure.
became,
Yeah,
I'm best friend. My best friend's name is Sarah. We became best friends when we were in college. We met at young adult group at church,
yeah.
and we just became like, after when we became friends, like it was like, she's very different than me. She's quiet. She would never be on a podcast. She's quiet. She's like the gifts I have, she kind of has like the opposite. So
Hmm.
we do have very much this Mary and Martha approach to things. Like when I clean, it's like very like, and she's like a little bit less like whatever. But she'll bake and cook, and I will like not cook food or anything. So we have a very, and like, she's very good at like being a helper. I'm very good at leading. So it really
Mhm.
fits together very nicely as friends. So like I would plan a conference and she'd be good at putting the pieces together and, getting the other parts done. So it's very much, we very much complement each other, and people have commented on that. And so I think that's cool, because like you have that dream of when you're 7 years old and you're going to live with your best friend in your own house. And like
Yeah.
I get to do that. I do get sad though, because like I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I kind of wanted like a husband and
Yeah.
kids, all that. But I'm kind of like, well, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if the right guy came along, it's not like I'd say let's see, but I don't know. I'd be like, oh yes, let's go get married. I don't know. I'd have to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess, as you were saying this, like I'm thinking, is there something I've experienced that's similar to that? And I remember, at a young age, people would always say, oh, John, my real name, I haven't told you my real name. It's John. Um, Oh
I
no,
knew
you
that
have me on
because from
Facebook. Never mind.
our
You have me on Facebook. You know
Facebook
who I
friend.
am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even a secret identity thing. It's kind of funny
Right.
because
It's
people are like,
secret
"Oh, I called you John on your podcast." I'm like, no, no, no. It's just an artist name. I don't care if people know who I really am. But like it's like John's going to be a pastor, and I heard that at a young age, and then as a young adult, it got spoken over my life a couple times, and all that. And so I think about that. It's like I never dropped everything and went to Bible college and actually worked at a church. And there was a long time in my life where I was just like, man, I'm not doing this because I just know my family wouldn't be okay with it. It wouldn't work for them. It would change my lifestyle. There'd be all these things, and it's just like, I can't ask my family to put their life on hold for me to go to Bible college so I can be a pastor. And over the last, I guess, couple years, I've just been like, you know what? I've got 2 podcasts. I've got like a music thing I'm doing. I'm like, this is great. And nobody's telling me what I can or cannot do. I just do whatever I want artistically. And it's
Well, I think when you become a performer, honestly, like you do have a different performer identity.
yeah.
'Cause I think I told you that I worked in journalism, and
Okay.
I
Yeah.
interviewed
Yeah.
I've interviewed Christian bands and Christian artists.
Yeah.
And my special gift was breaking down the artist to the point I get behind that persona and get to the real person. I
Ooh.
didn't necessarily mean to do it. It did. And you could
Now
definitely,
I want you to do that to me.
but I'm the one being interviewed.
Oh, I know.
And
We'll have to do another one where you do that.
I wanted the person to, like, when you hear, like, when I hear stories about certain people, there's like a connective tissue. There's a reason that I want to listen to that person, or what I want to listen to
Yeah.
that story. I love when people talk about what the meaning is behind songs, because it gives me buy-in. So I
Yeah.
knew that if I'm going to write an article about this guy's new album,
Yeah.
like Counting Stars by Andrew Peterson, if I'm going to write, when I was working on that, I'm like, I don't think I actually interviewed him, but whatever. But like, I'm gonna have to find some kind of emotional buy-in that's gonna hook people to this album, so they want to like listen to it. Because I didn't usually interview people I didn't really like. I would listen to a pre-release album, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this album is so good. And then you talk to like Bebo
And you're
Norman,
just compelled.
right? And you want everybody to know how great this is. And you need the good quotes. So you kind of guide them along so you can get the quotes that you want to make everybody know about this article. That's what's great about music, if you love music. So, but you would see, this is true, I won't say who, but you'd sometimes I had friendships, still kind of do, but not many. But you would see this person go up on stage and make people laugh and play this song, and like literally 20 minutes before that person was backstage almost having a panic attack on the phone with their wife. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And I don't think that they're being insincere. I think some people are like, oh, well, that's not sincere, they should just go out in front of the stage and have a panic attack, or like that. No, like, that's their job. Like, get with it. Like, that's their job. But like, you don't want, like, you wouldn't say that about your pastor. But the same thing was that because they had the music, the last person I think I saw, last Christian performer I saw was Jason Gray. He's great, but he'll talk. I mean, if you're familiar with him, but he's good, and he really talks about his songs. He has a very pastoral approach, a shepherd approach. And, like, his songs are very emotional, and they teach you. And he's very, very much a deep thinker. So so between his songs, he'll talk, and he talks deeply and richly. And I'm like, he's teaching me from the Bible. He's teaching me from the songs. He's teaching me from people he reads. Like, he reads Frederick Buechner, I think that's his name. And pastoring is shepherding. He's shepherding all these people. So I think we've made our view of pastor way too small.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
100%. And that's what I'm learning.
Well, like, the thing is, like, okay, So single women are relegated to going to a mission field and talking to some tribe in like wherever in South America, and they're allowed to lead a church there. But my gosh, if they came back and led the American church, what would happen? It would be chaos. And it's like it's and the argument always is like, well, the woman has to go because there's nobody else to go. And I'm like, well, that's crap. Why aren't there any men to go? Where are these people? I mean, where are these men of valor? And I think maybe I don't know, but I don't know.
Well, I think like on that, I mean, if you look at like the way that men and women are viewed, and there's kind of this mentality that women are less than, which really bothers me.
Yeah.
And then this mentality that this is what a man is. So like when you talk about someone like your father, who is a bit more soft-spoken, a bit more about emotion, there's certain people that would say, well, that's not what a man is.
Right.
Like, so someone like your father would fight, you know, against that stereotype all the time. And it's like, for me, it's like raising boys. I'm just like, dude, you just rock whatever masculinity you got. Like, don't worry about it. And I look at my daughter and I'm just like, man, the pressure that women have to look a certain way just drives me nuts. Like, I'm just like.
My dad did not. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Your dad did not?
He did not want a son. Because he felt like he couldn't raise him to be this tough man.
Yeah.
My dad, way more. My dad was raised by an alcoholic. His father was an alcoholic, and he would beat on him. Specifically, my dad mostly. And my dad was actually supposed to have been aborted, but his mother was Catholic and wouldn't do it.
Wow.
So he really always had this idea that he shouldn't exist. But I think he was his mom's favorite, I think. That's what he told me. She died before I was born. But so I think because of that, he was largely influenced by his mother's touch and you know, and maybe, you know, there you go. There's a man, you know, you don't have strong men to raise boys. They don't get ideas, but you need strong women too. And not necessarily strong as in strong, like everybody needs to be the same. I think if you have a woman who's fighting MS and she makes it to church one day and sits in the back pew and is there in pain the whole time, there you go. That's a strong woman. You know, you have a woman that it's a soprano and can belt out a solo every week. That's a strong woman. You have a woman that comes in every Sunday night to clean up the entire church and pick up the little pew pencils on the floor, doesn't say a word, is meek. That's a strong woman. I mean, I think the idea is like we don't, I think the thing is like you can have the same thing with a man. Like we think a strong man is like someone who's physically strong, can carry heavy things. I think a man that chooses not to punch another man in the face, even though they very well might have a reason to, if there is ever such a thing, but someone who chooses to walk away from a violent situation, that's a strong man. A man who can carry 50 pounds of dog food, that's a strong man. A man can, you know, come and clean the church with his wife on a Sunday night, that's a strong man.
I think sometimes a man that's willing to cry is a strong man.
Right. And
you know, it's like, I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm not going to hide the fact that, you know, I honestly, it's funny. The movie An American Tail, it gets me every time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so funny. But it's like, seriously, that little mouse, like he's away from his parents and he's by himself. And it's
It's rough.
Yeah,
man.
I'm not crying right now. I'm strong.
I don't know. I think that I saw this video once about how we don't have good emotional first aid in this country. And it's something we just don't teach people. So they have like crazy responses to things just because they don't like understand like how to regulate their emotions. And I'm like, whoa, we should learn how to regulate. Like we think it's okay to get really mad and yell at somebody in a store because they took the cookies we wanted or something. Like, we think that that's a good response. Like, we think it's okay to like yell at people. And if we get really mad, like, yeah, you told her off. Like, we think that's so great. Like, we celebrate telling people off. Like, that's not really generally like a great thing.
No.
I think we don't learn how to like treat people like people. I think women don't necessarily want to be. I think this is the thing I was talking about with my friend. Her son is like, I don't know. He thinks everything that is women's rights is actually like feminism, and everybody who wants anything is feminism. And I'm like, so he doesn't think women should have the right to vote? Like what is going on here? And she's like, well, he thinks that women's rights means that women want more rights than men. Like, they want to rule over men. And I was like, well, that's not what it means. It means that women want to have equal rights to men. We want like equal pay for equal work. Like, and he just can't understand that. And I think sometimes in churches, men don't get that either. Like, women don't really like want to take, in general, I mean, there's probably some, but in general, like, I don't want to take over your pulpit.
Yeah.
I literally just want the same amount of funding that the men's ministry gets.
Exactly.
Or I want a little bit more funding, maybe, because guess what? We have to pay for childcare, because the men, when they go to their breakfast, they leave their kids home with the women. The women, when they come to the prayer breakfast, the men don't want to watch their kids. So we have to get childcare. Or we have single men. So maybe, hey, two of your husbands want to come watch all the kids.
Yeah.
I think it's like that kind of stuff. Like, or we're going to need money to pay for sitters to come watch the kids, because it's not acceptable to not let women who have kids or a woman who's single not come to a women's breakfast just because, like, this should be something that we as a church handle. So I think it's those kinds of things. Like, we want, it used to be, it's been that men are the head of the household, and if they fall, the whole household falls. So we need to put our funding into men's ministry, and we will promote men's events and things like that. Men. But like, the woman is the heart of the household, possibly. And if she falls, like, I mean, there's things that women are very much like, I'm not trying to be, but general, like, when I've met families and work with families, the women organize the kids' activities, their schedules, and they kind of knows what's going on with that. And the husband may know, but he doesn't really plan it. That's what I've mostly witnessed. I have never seen a man that did that, actually. So the woman goes down, man. All the scheduling goes down. Now I've seen some of my friends, like my one friend, her husband does, like, he does all the meal planning and things like that. They actually have a more egalitarian household, but they're not Christians.
Yeah.
They wouldn't like, they don't think anything of it. And she doesn't try to be the boss or anything. Like, they just sort of have it figured out. They don't worry about it. They just do what they do.
Exactly.
It works out very well. Like, he does the lawn, he does the snow, she does the decorating, and actually that's very much how I live with my best friend. Like, we don't really worry about like, oh, I'll buy tissues. We don't worry about who bought the tissues and how we're going to break that down in the budget. So a lot of our neighbors, I think a lot of our friends, at one point, like, whenever people first meet us, they just assume that we're like lesbians. Just because we've been friends for so long, and because we live together and just get along so well. And it's like, no, actually, we're both heterosexuals, but, you know.
Well, I think that's it, though. It's like we're taught to have certain biases about gender, when in reality, it's like, well, can we figure out what makes sense? And I think when we're talking about, the biases that happen due to our own experience, where you start looking at things a different way because you had an experience, right? As you did with your dad, as you did with, immigrants, it's like you're now personalizing it instead of just seeing it as an issue. And when you personalize things, it's like your morality starts to shift. Just like, when we talk about, different issues with like sexuality and everything like that, it's a whole different story when you're talking about your child or you're talking about your best friend. It's just kind of like, well, hold on here. I can't just be cut and dry. I can't just be black and white and just like make like this broad statement about a group of people. And when you talk about women's ministry, it's like, no, it should be equal. It should be paid the same as men's ministry. Or they're saying there's more money that should go to men's ministry because we're trying to get men in the church, and men should be the, you know, the leaders of the household and all this stuff. And it's like, I mean, that in itself too, it's like, you must be the spiritual leader of the household. How much pressure are we putting on our men?
Yeah.
When we could just say, you know what, like, why don't we all just like work at
Well,
being
yeah.
better followers of Christ and let the chips fall where they may. Let's stop focusing so much on gender and figure out what makes sense. It's like, if you're going to have a women's ministry and they're saying we don't want to pay extra for childcare, okay, cool. Why don't we have the men stay at home with the children? They're
Right.
theirs too, I believe, I hope.
Well, the thing that was really funny was that when I took over the women's ministry at my old church, being like one of the youngest women, you know, one of the youngest women in the ministry, taking over the whole ministry. It was hilarious. But after we did our conference that they never said could happen, but they reluctantly supported. Well, some people said that we couldn't do it in leadership, but then the Methodist Church has like pastors, and then they have like a church board, and the church board is who really makes the decisions. So some of the people were like, whatever. But then the men's ministry were so inspired by like the women's ministry doing this conference that they did their own conference. So then we took some of the money that we made. So remember, the church was ready to fund the whole thing, but we actually made extra money on our conference, because that's like, so they thought they were just going to have to bankroll it, but they didn't. Then we donated some money to the men's ministry to do their conference. And I was like,
wonderful.
And it didn't, you feel like it'd be like, ha, slam dunk, but it really didn't feel like that. It felt like, how cool is God? Like,
yes.
Like
yeah.
he wasn't just like going to meet our need that we paid the church back the money they let us borrow. He gave us extra money that we can make ministry go forward.
Very cool.
So, and then we were able to volunteer and then we did volunteer for the men's conference, and we did help prepare their food, and offered childcare for them for free, because we said we do want the men to learn about God, and we want them to learn about the Bible, so we are going to support them, and that's what we did. Then the men came back and helped serve. Then the men at our next conference helped come back and help serve and helped us put a set thing together as part of our set for the stage. And then we actually had this great relationship. So I know that symbiotic relationships can work. Like, I know men and women can work together and do really cool things.
Exactly.
And I've seen it.
Well, and I think, it's funny, we talk about like, how we're trying to build up equality for women. And it's like, what needs to be done for men right now? And the thing I'm stuck on is men's mental health. Like, there's a big gap there. And I think, like, I'm not gonna, like, no guy in his right mind is gonna fight for men's rights right now. It's like, that's silly. Men have ran everything forever. But one gap that we do have is men's mental health. And I think that a lot of men's mental health issues are rooted in toxic masculinity. A lot of women's issues are rooted in toxic masculinity. And so it's like, that's my, like, if I could solve that, that would be beautiful. And maybe that'd make me lots of money and I could retire. But that's, I really think though that men's mental health resolves so many things. Because I really believe that men who, have addiction, it's rooted in mental health, including sexual addiction, which is rampant.
That's crazy big. I mean, you look at suicide rates, men are always higher. Men are less likely to get mental health. I mean, it's the statistics scream.
Well, they're less likely to ask for mental help, I'm sure.
Right. They're less likely to get help, they're less likely to ask for mental health. And there really just aren't as many male counselors available even for men. So it's a tough thing, I think, for men, because like they're not we're not taught as a culture that men, I think we're getting there. I think we're getting more where people talk about their feelings. Honestly, I love MASH. And I think you start seeing like when you, like around when MASH came out in the 70s, you start seeing characters talk about their feelings like a lot. You can see Hawkeye, Alan Alda's character, talk about his feelings, and then Alan Alda went into like movies and like his characters would talk about their feelings, and he was like a big advocate of
Have you heard
women's
his
rights.
podcast?
I need to listen to his
It is
podcast.
dynamite. Listen to it. It's so good. Yeah.
I love him so much. And I read his book, and like, you know, he has three daughters. And so he's like, you know, all about women. And I think when you start seeing pop culture figures speaking to women, you know, it makes it different. And when you look at Jesus, like, there's a guy that hung out with women. I mean, he hung out with women. He went to their houses, you know.
Do you think you don't think he followed the Billy Graham rule?
I really don't know that he had to, because he was I think that Jesus, whatever the rule was of the day that worked, that's the rule he followed. The one that would give whoever he is with, you know, he did what was right. I mean, he's God. But I think what's so cool about Jesus is like, I think people are like, oh, Paul, he hates women, blah, 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 blah. I don't really think he hates women. But like, you think about the disciples following Jesus, and they see how Jesus is with women, like the woman at the well, you know, the Samaritan woman. Like, they weren't like, yo, why is there a Samaritan woman here? Like, why are you talking to her? Like, they kind of knew at that point, I think, to, you know, be quiet about it. And, you know, they're just probably like, oh, there's Jesus talking to somebody again. You know, they probably were very used to it. But Jesus talking to all these women and like inviting them into their ministry. And like, the thing that I always find, and now I've actually heard other people talking about it, but one thing that I thought was just amazing about Jesus was, you know, the first person he appeared to was a woman after he was resurrected. I mean, like, what? Yeah. Nobody talks about how exciting that is. But if you're a woman, like, you know every single woman of the Bible, because
I'm sure. Yeah.
And you don't hear a lot of sermons about these women.
Yeah.
And so, like, Jesus came into the world with a woman. I mean, obviously Joseph was there too, but, you know, Mary was a woman. You know, Mary, he appeared to was a woman. He apparently likes women named Mary. And I just think it's really cool. I just think it's a really cool thing that you don't, so like when you think about, oh, we're putting our beliefs on scripture a lot of times and not letting scripture interpret scripture. And I think then, I mean, you get to the point where like, well, I say this and you say that, and everybody just has different interpretations. I think we can look at scripture though and believe that women seem to have a very important place in Jesus' ministry. Men seem to have a very important place in Jesus' ministry. They're ministering together, apparently in some people's houses. You have Timothy being raised by his mother and his grandmother, and then you have Paul mentoring Timothy. You have, you know what I mean? You have all these things happening, and like, we should be doing that. We don't need to be worrying about who's doing what as much as we need to be working together, and we're not doing that at all.
Yeah. Well, and that I don't like, I can we see people as people? Like, that would be really cool. And I think, you know, like what I've learned a lot too, it's funny growing up Gen X, it's like we really worked at trying to get rid of racism by pretending there aren't races. And, you know, I have friends that I grow up with who have different experiences. I mean, I would even say like, you know, I had a friend and it's like, oh, she's bisexual. And we were like, oh yeah, cool. Don't care. Right. Like, it just, we didn't care. We didn't care about differences at all. And I think there's still people, you know, like my age that are like proud of that fact and they want to stick to that. And so when they hear Black Lives Matter, they're like, you know, no, all lives matter. Right. And I think about this and I'm like, no. I think we can still treat people like people while recognizing their story may be a bit different than your own. And maybe they have things to bring to the table that you don't because they're different from you. And so it's
it's a confusing conversation for sure.
But it's like, you can value people the same, and also celebrate their differences. And, you know, at the same time, also understand that their story may have some difficult parts to it that you can
Yeah.
learn from as well.
Well, like, I would say Black Lives Matter might have been, I mean, might have been a place where I was kind of like, I don't know what the heck's going on there. All
Hmm.
lives matter. And this was, and I had this view long before the George Floyd thing. And, you know, I was just, people say things don't happen on Facebook and it's just bad. But I was just like, well, all lives matter. I mean, I didn't say that. I was just like, well, I think all lives matter. Like, what's so different
Right.
about that? Then my friend on Facebook, she posted this meme and it talks about Black lives. Like when you say Black lives matter, it's not that you're saying, you might have seen this, but it's not saying that white lives don't matter, or you know, whoever's lives don't matter. It's saying that you may have had struggles, you may have had poverty, you may have had whatever, but your skin color wasn't a factor in all of that.
Right.
That's what's different about Black lives matter. Like the things that you might have struggled with, you didn't have your skin color being an additional thing that you struggled with.
100%.
And I was like, oh yeah, Black lives matter, you know. And so I was like, okay, I understand that now. And then I'm like, oh, and see, so that's just me having a bias because I'm being ignorant because I didn't know what's something to look at. And then I'm like, but then, you know, I saw it on Facebook. Like people are like, oh, Facebook, social media, it's awful. I love social media. I get to talk to people in Canada. I get to hear new views and hear about things I never heard of before. I get to, you know, and so I think it's what you make of it. But I would never have had that view on Black Lives Matter years before George Floyd ever happened if I hadn't seen that meme on Facebook. And I'm like,
Totally.
yeah, that makes sense. So I think like sometimes people just don't know. And that's why they don't do anything. They just don't know. They're not trying to be jerks. So when people are asking about women in ministry, I just try not to assume that they're being jerks. Like you have to do that with teenagers as a youth worker. Like you probably know that they're probably in the hallway, a guy and a girl are alone in the hallway because they want to make out, you know, and sometimes, like, you know, sometimes it's kind of obvious when when I was a youth worker, you'd be like, yeah, okay. I mean, they're dating, they're alone, who knows what's going to happen. But I'd have to go in, I would go in and take the approach like they didn't know where to be or something. Like, oh, you know what I mean? Like they were just too
That's
stupid.
awesome.
So they just be like, hey, Jill and John, do you know that we're all going to be going in that room? Let's go. And you kind of like bring them, but like try not to shame them. Be like, what are you two doing here? You know? And so you kind of have like more of a fun approach. Like, oh my gosh, you're missing the fun. Come on.
Yes.
You know, instead of trying to convince them what they're doing is wrong or whatever. It's so I learned that to be like a great approach to people. So like I try not to assume that people are being stupid unless it's completely obvious. I kind of think, well, maybe they just don't know.
Yeah, give people the benefit of the doubt and hear them out for sure. And I think I like that about Facebook. There's more of a long form kind of way of having discussions. I've also learned that some things are not worth worth discussing. And so a lot of times I'll just let people comment and they'll just keep commenting, saying stuff that I don't agree with. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let people be wrong. It's so good for my mental health right now.
We're on Twitter or Facebook or just
on Facebook. You know, Twitter, I hardly ever get into any trouble on Twitter ever. I'm weird that way. Like I guess my feed is just nonsense. Maybe that's why. But
I don't get into a lot of. I'm very much a peacemaker. I like to like live in the merry land where everybody gets along.
Yeah.
And I know that's not always possible.
Weird evangelical Twitter.
Oh, we changed the name though.
Oh, what?
It's Weird Christian Twitter now.
Oh, it's Weird Christian Twitter. Oh, I see. Yeah.
We changed it on August 7th because I don't know. But like one thing was that I'm really into ex-evangelicals. I love we call them ex-Vs. Yes. And they're like my people and they don't, and so like we were finding that sometimes people, like I was finding some people like, they message me like, do I belong here? I'm not, is it okay? Like asking me
because I'm not an evangelical anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. like
Because it's a
asking you for,
voting demographic, really, right?
well,
Like
well,
evangelical has become a voting demographic. It's like you
well,
guys are the ones that
it
put
would
this guy in office. Yeah.
it would break my heart because kind of like, is it okay, like kind of like, is it okay if I tweet here? And it's like, dude, this is Twitter. Like, first of all, anybody can tweet anywhere, but like almost asking for permission if they could belong to this random group of people on social media. And I'm like, of course we have room for you. Like, what
Yes.
the, like anybody can, like, you could probably be like a Wiccan and be part of it. I mean, there'd obviously be some beliefs that are going to be different, but we're not going to be like, oh, you're a Wiccan, you can't come joke around about what kind of coffee you can eat, you know? I mean, it's like, I love, it's weird because weird evangelical Twitter or weird Christian Twitter, they kind of, our beliefs kind of are like the same. I mean, we do have like there's a huge Southern Baptist crowd. I'm not Southern Baptist, I'm Wesleyan. There's a couple other Wesleyans. There's a couple of Anglicans. We have an Anglican priest in Weird Christian Twitter. Like,
Cool. Yeah.
I like the fact that it's varied. I think what a lot of people on Weird Christian Twitter find though is that idealistically, like they're like maybe more theologically conservative, but more like like their political views are a bit more progressive.
Right.
But a lot of them are still kind of pro-life and or against abortion. I don't think anybody's pro-death. A lot of people are against abortion as well. Yeah. So it's like, and then, you know, the death penalty, you find a lot of now, it used to be if you're against abortion, you're pro-death penalty. Yeah. Now it's more like leaning the other way. Like you're
just not a fan of death in general, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like this whole new thing, but a lot of people like a lot of people have found on their Twitter feed, like we all love Trump or we all hate Trump, and they don't find that like sweet spot in the middle where it's like, well, okay, but we aren't ready to like, you know, do this, we're not ready to do that. And I think a lot of people have found that sweet middle spot with friends on Twitter. I mean, that's why I went on Twitter. I literally just went on Twitter like a year ago, like I started back in like February because I was like, State of the Union address. I love watching what the Daily Show has to say about the State of the Union address. Like they have like this thing called sniff counter, and they just count every time the president sniffs, and it's hilarious. So I just love seeing all the crazy things people say. And, like I would literally go on Twitter any State of the Union. It didn't matter who was president. It's hilarious to me. I think people pointing out humanly things about humans is hilarious.
Totally.
And so I just went on for that and just kind of stayed because I was like, oh my gosh, there's people that feel politically homeless. Like wow, there's a lot of us. And then, you know.
I had a really, really cool Sunday. I'm off social media completely on Sundays. And I did like the stream worship service in my church. And then I put on some like Hillsong United, like that album, I think it's Zion with like oceans and all that on it, right? I don't know if they'll ever top that album. It's just so good. And then I started watching the Bible series. I just had like the last episode on the Bible mini series. And then I started watching AD, like the first episode of AD, which is like kind of the continuation of the Bible series. And there was something that just stuck in my head from it. And, you know, it was like the early Christians, the early church. It's like right after Jesus' resurrection. And one of the followers says to the other follower, remember, the door is open to everyone. And I was like, wow, I think we lost that. And so like when you're talking about like, am I allowed? It's like, yes, you are. Like everybody belongs. And it's like, that's what the message of the gospel is like, you're all invited. And it's not this exclusive club of terrible people that you don't want to join anyways. Cause I feel like that's what a lot of it has become.
Well, I mean, like, why would you want to go? I mean, honestly, I've seen people talk to Beth Moore in really awful ways, like I was talking about before. I'm like, why? If I'm a non-believer, like, you're not really making me want to come to your church acting like that. Or if you're
100%.
they're
That is
from the
my biggest beef with all of this is like, what are we appearing like? How are we representing the name of Christ by telling everybody what we don't like and who we don't like? It's just,
well, I
it's
mean,
awful.
I have a big heart. When I went to college, I went to, I think part of my thing is I went to a women's college.
Hmm.
And so I kind of learned, like, oh my gosh, women can be leaders at things. Boys don't have to just run the newspaper. Like, all women,
Right.
look, women can do all these things. And I just had never, I mean, I knew women could do things, but you just didn't ever see. So, I mean, a lot of the people in leadership were women. So I just
Right.
get this, whoa, like, this is amazing. Um, so having that view has shaped a lot of my life. I forgot what I was going to say about that, um, but I think that, going to women's college shaped my life. And the thing is, some people told my mom, they're like, she's going to that college. It's like, it's a local college. She's like, she's going there. Why isn't she going to Christian college? Like I was going to lose my faith. Like there was this big, like, fear among my mom's friends that I was going to, like, lose my faith at college. And the best part was that, like, actually I had to, like, finally, I didn't go to, like, I went to Christian high school, but before that I went to public school. But, like, in situations where I'd have to stand up for my faith and, like, know what I needed to believe, those were the situations I grew in the most and had the most,
Yeah.
had the most assuredness of what I believed. And when I went to college, I started to, like, stand up for, like, what I believed in. And I'm like, whoa, like, I do believe in this. But I also had never really, I mean, I had a girl in high school who said she was bisexual. I never met anybody who was gay before. I had, like, no context for this. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know what to do about girls kissing or holding hands. I'm like, and you go to an all women's college, there are
Oh,
definitely
it's everywhere. Hey,
there's a
crazy,
lot of lesbians, and I'm like, I don't know
crazy.
what to do with this.
Yeah.
And so then, coming out of that, like, I'd start hearing stories about these, this is exactly how I got to become friends with with lesbian people. I heard their stories, like, oh my gosh, you like chocolate ice cream? So do I. Like, you have a dog? So do I.
Turns
And
out they're people.
whoa, it was, like, amazing. You grow up in the church and you're like, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then amazingly, when you see people as people, they want to go to church with you because they see you as a person too.
Yeah.
And so I have a really big heart for like, having had these relationships with a lot of women who were, questioning their sexuality, who were lesbians. I have a big heart for that. So it does grieve me to see people just say horrible things about people who are gay or
Yeah.
bisexual or whatever, transsexual, LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
And, like, so I remember somebody was, like, transitioning from male to female, and somebody refused to call that person her.
Right.
Even though the person's like, these are my pronouns, I'm a her.
Yeah.
People are like, I won't call that person that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, who cares? Does it really matter? Does it really matter if you call this person he or she? It doesn't. You have, like, it's not gonna, the gospel is not gonna fall apart if you call this person she.
Yes.
Like, it does not fall apart because of that.
I have a friend who he said if you've got and I don't know if this will work for people who are affirming, but he was saying, like, if you, like, let's say worst case scenario, you really do think all of that is wrong and it's whatever, right? He's like, imagine you had, like, a grandma who has, like, Alzheimer's and thinks she's 22. How much time are you going to spend convincing grandma she's 22 when in reality you can just go with it and
that's what we did.
not ruin grandma's day? And it's like, why are we going around trying to ruin people's perception of them? Like,
that's what we did.
You're not going to change their mind about it. You're not going to have a relationship with them. I think you're only doing this because this is about you.
Well, that's what we did with my grandmother. She was starting to have dementia, and, like, if she had a bladder infection, she would get, like, really, like, woo, look, there's my old home. Like, she was just out of her mind. And my mom was just getting so upset about this. And I'm like, my grandma's like, in the gymnasium upstairs. I mean, like, she's at a 1-floor rehab hospital. There's no gymnasium upstairs. But she's like, you know, I'm like, well, tell me about the gymnasium, you know, and she's telling me these wild stories. And then it just became funny, like what she was going to come up with, and we'd share stories. And it became less of a sad thing and more of a thing where, like, okay, at least how can she feel safe in this environment? I think having a counseling background, having gone to seminary to get a counseling degree was helpful, because it could see, like, within these constraints, how to help her see, like, how can we best find God in these constraints? Like, God's not constrained by this. We are. We're constrained by these concepts, but God isn't. And, like, you know, and I think, like, sexuality or any of it, we're so constrained by it. And, like, you know, honestly, at the end
I
of the
kind
day,
of wonder,
like,
is
if you
this
have a girlfriend,
similar?
I'm gonna have you over for dinner. I don't care.
Exactly.
It's,
How is this different than, like, you have a friend who is a Christian that's a Trump supporter, and you kind of look at them and you're like, okay, I'm not going to try to change you,
yeah,
and I'm going to love you as you are. And I mean, like, I guess the biggest thing is, like, and I've said this before on this podcast, I'm like, out of all the sins, out of all the things we want to call sins, you're going to say who you love and what you think of your body are the worst sins. Because I could think of a lot of things I do daily that actually hurt people, that are sins that I need to work on. Why would I care who somebody else loves? Why would I care what somebody else thinks of their body? Like, it's silliness. And so I'm just like, you know what? We don't need to do this, right? Okay, so we need to wrap up.
oh,
But
sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's all good. It was a good conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to say, you know, for those who say, you know, like, biblically, you know, women should not have leadership in the church? Is there anything else you would want to say to someone
Well,
who
I mean,
thinks
like,
the Bible's?
what kind of leadership? What I
That's a
found is,
good question. That would be a good question to ask them, wouldn't it?
I
Because
found
how can they argue against women being in women's ministry?
right.
Mhm.
That's and then I always think is, like, always been like, you really want a man leading small groups for middle school girls? Because
Yes,
I don't.
yes.
I love middle school girls, but sometimes I don't even want to be in the room for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They all get crazy, and you're just like,
I
oh
am
my.
good with not doing that.
It's just right. I mean, do you want to do that? Because, you know,
No.
and let the senior pastor go with the 6th grade girls. Woo! When they start talking about some boy band.
And I think it's like you said, too. You look at Beth Moore, started out in women's ministry, men started showing up. What's she supposed to do? Turn them away? And so I think what you're saying is very logical. And
I
so I
think,
don't know why anybody would have any kind of beef with anything
yeah.
you said
And I
today.
think, like, if you have, like, a senior pastor and a woman wants to become a senior pastor in your denomination doesn't allow that. And you can try to change the minds of the people in your denomination if that's your calling. But maybe your thing is, like, I'm kind of like, dude, just leave, just go to a different church. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to
100%.
be, it depends, like, really what God's called you to do. I don't
Yeah,
presume to know what God's called all the people in the world to do. I mean, I know
totally.
he had a donkey talk to, like, a guy, Balaam. He had a
Yeah,
donkey talk to a guy. Like, I would never have predicted that. Like, who would have
yeah.
that
Well, and
coming?
I think, you know, the other thing I've heard as an argument is, like, it's very arrogant of a woman to say she should be a lead pastor. And to that, I want to say it's very arrogant of a man to think he should be the lead pastor. I mean, what level of arrogance do you have to say I should be leading all these people? I mean, to be president, to be pastor, to be a teacher, to be a podcaster. I mean, like, what kind of level of arrogance do I have to say, you know what? I should be the guy that has guests on and talks to them about
Well,
stuff.
I approach all the things with fear and trembling. Like, God,
Yeah,
you do this, and I let him make it very obvious to me.
yeah.
Because, like, you know, I always say, oh, you know, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna take a back seat, and, you know, whatever. And my best friend's always like, she's usually bright. You know, like, I didn't expect to, like, go on Twitter and, like, start uniting people under this thing called Weird Christian Twitter. But, like, I have underlying conditions. I I'm at high risk of hospitalization or possibly death if I get COVID. So I have to be careful. And I'm like, God,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. Like, nobody knows me at the church I go to. Like, it's huge. And what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to do ministry in my house? Like, there's one person here. But God's like, well, I gave you social media. You can text people, you can talk on video. And then all of a sudden I have like friends in like Spain, and a friend who lives in Spain, and a friend who lives in England. And like, we do Zoom calls for like some of the women on for Christian Twitter do Zoom calls. And like,
That's so cool.
So edifying. And it's like, well, we can't go anywhere. Or like, this is how it is here. And like, and so it's like, okay, God, like, constraints maybe sometimes make better ministry, because there's only in certain places only God can do the ministry. Like Twitter, like people are like, oh, social media stinks. And I'm like, I have friends in my pocket on my phone, I call them my
Exactly.
pocket friends.
My pocket friends. That's awesome. Okay, so one more question before we go here. Why are you the Leslie Knope of Christian Twitter?
I don't really know. I really like Leslie. Like, I love Parks and Rec. I love Leslie Knope because she's just like so engaging, and she's just so like, I sleep a lot more than she does, but she definitely has this like, let's bring everybody together. Let's call people on their gifts. She's really good at like putting people in their areas.
I see
when I've done, like, I used to teach spiritual gifts at my old church, and I love to help people find their gifting and find their place. And I think I really would like to get a life coach certification. I'd love to just help people like figure out their place. I love doing that with young adults.
That does sound like fun.
So like Leslie Knope does that, and she sees like the possibilities in people, and I like to see people, and I like to see their possibilities. Like,
very cool.
I like dogs too, and I like to see their possibilities. So it's just a whole thing of possibility.
Well, thank you, Amy, for coming on the Wax Museum.
Thanks for having me here.
And we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, we could. I don't know.
I'm sure there's something to talk about.
Parks and Rec. We'll just talk about.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Air Smudge.